of the civil rights movement is one of the great stories of heroism and bravery in our nation's search for freedom. And music was there every step of the way. When blacks chose to walk rather than ride segregated city buses in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955, they sang. In 1960, when black students sat in at segregated lunch counters across the South and were beaten, they sang. They sang as they were dragged in the streets. They sang in the jails and the paddy wagons. And when the buses carrying the Freedom Riders were firebombed and the riders thrown to the ground and beaten, they sang. Now, a great deal of this music came from just one place, the Highlander Folk School, a social justice leadership school and cultural center in New Market, Tennessee. Now, they published a book called the Highlander Songbook that would become the Bible of the freedom song movement. And it had this to say about singing. It said, "A song is to be sung. One's musical abilities may be limited, but there are no limitations on one's spirit. Some songs are meant to be shouted, others to be sung quietly and lived with and allowed to grow within you." Now, the history of these songs goes back much earlier than the 1950s and the 1960s. Many of these songs have their roots all the way back in the freedom songs of the slaves. And "Follow the Drinking Gourd" is exactly that kind of song. C.T. Vivian, the distinguished civil rights minister, well, he talked of learning this song from folk singer Guy Carolyn. He said, he gave us some background on the song and boom, it began to make sense. Little by little, spiritual after spiritual began to appear with new words and changes. And it would be songs like "Follow the Drinking Gourd" that would cross over into the mainstream folk music of the 1950s and the 1960s and spread the word of the civil rights movement to millions. When the sun comes up and the first quail calls, follow the drinking gourd. The old man will be waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. For the old man is waiting just to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. Down the river bank, it's a mighty good road. Dead trees will show you the way. Left foot, peg foot, traveling on. Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. For the old man is waiting just to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. Well, the river ends between two hills. Follow the drinking gourd. But there's another river on the other side. Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the little river, follow the drinking gourd. The old man will be waiting for to carry you to freedom, follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd, follow the drinking gourd. For the old man will be waiting just to carry you to freedom, follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd, follow the drinking gourd. For the old man will be waiting just to carry you to freedom, follow the drinking gourd. For the old man will be waiting just to carry you to freedom. If you follow that drinking gourd. Now, in mid-March of 1961, the Congress of Racial Equality announced that they would send a biracial group of riders to travel on Greyhound and Trailway buses from Washington, D.C., going down to New Orleans, Louisiana, challenging segregation along the way. They would become known as the Freedom Riders. Now, these were not naive people. They knew the danger they were heading into. As one of the Freedom Riders put it, Henry Schwarzschild, he said, "My participation in the Freedom Rides was an act of faith in the validity of a moral act. I went because I needed to go." Now, the Freedom Riders were met with jailings and beatings and firebombings in Birmingham and Montgomery, Alabama, and Jackson, Mississippi. And when the first 186 Freedom Riders returned to Jackson to be arraigned, something, by the way, the local officials never expected to see, well, over 2,500 came out to show their support in the rain. And freedom songs were a big part of that celebration. As a matter of fact, it would be this first mass meeting of Freedom Riders from all across the country that would begin the great spread of the freedom song material. From Jackson, Mississippi, these songs went to every city in the South and to the colleges in the North. Now, this song here is one of those tunes. It's a song that was written to celebrate the Freedom Riders. It's called "Hallelujah, I'm Traveling." And it was based on an old labor song from the 1920s called "Hallelujah, I'm a Bum." Stand up and rejoice, the great day is here. We're riding for freedom and victory is near. Hallelujah, I'm traveling, hallelujah, ain't it fine? Hallelujah, I'm traveling down freedom's main line. Now in 1954, the Supreme Court has said, "Listen here, Mr. Jim Crow, it's time you were dead." Hallelujah, I'm traveling, hallelujah, ain't it fine? Hallelujah, I'm traveling down freedom's main line. Now I'm taking a trip on the Greyhound bus line. I'm riding in the front seat to Jackson this time. Hallelujah, I'm traveling, hallelujah, ain't it fine? Hallelujah, I'm traveling down freedom's main line. Now in Nashville, Tennessee, I can order a Coke, and the waitress in Woolworths knows it's no joke. Hallelujah, I'm traveling, hallelujah, ain't it fine? Hallelujah, I'm traveling down freedom's main line. rough and remote. The polls are now open for the Negroes to vote. Hallelujah, I'm traveling, hallelujah, ain't it fine? Hallelujah, I'm traveling down freedom's main line. I walked in Montgomery, I sat in Tennessee, and now I am riding for equality. Hallelujah, I'm traveling, hallelujah, ain't it fine? Hallelujah, I'm traveling down freedom's main line. Hallelujah, I'm traveling, hallelujah, ain't it fine? Hallelujah, I'm traveling down freedom's main line. Hallelujah. Well, on April the 6th of 1962, a mass march in Talladega, Alabama, was met by 40 city, county, and state policemen. They were armed with tear gas grenades, billy clubs, and of all things, a fire truck. Now, the student demonstrators, when they were ordered to return back to campus or be beaten back, they didn't leave. Instead, they just sat right down and began to sing the song, "We Shall Not Be Moved." Now, this song had evolved from an old church song, "I Shall Not Be Moved," whose lyrics stretch all the way back to the days of slavery. The song evolved in the 1930s. It was used as a work song, a union song, and sung on the picket lines by coal miners. And again, it evolved in the 1960s into a civil rights song. Now, you see this pattern repeated time and time again through the freedom song movement. Gospel songs evolve into labor songs, and then those evolve into civil rights songs. So what I'd like to do this evening is demonstrate that by starting this song out and performing it in its original gospel version, and then I'll modernize it, move it into the civil rights era. This is the original version, "I Shall Not Be Moved." I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. Oh, I shall not be moved. Jesus is my captain, and I shall not be moved. Jesus is my captain, and I shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. Oh, I shall not be moved. I'm on my way to glory, and I shall not be moved. I'm on my way to glory, I shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. Oh, I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. Oh, I shall not be moved. as I mentioned, these songs evolve over time, from gospel songs to labor songs and then to civil rights songs. And all they would do is simply rewrite the verses to reflect whatever struggle they were engaged in at the moment. Now on this song, however, they also changed the chorus, but only one word. Instead of singing, "I shall not be moved," it became, "We shall not be moved," like this. Black and white together, we shall not be moved. Black and white together, we shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. Oh, we shall not be moved. Oh, we shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. Oh, we shall not be moved. Oh, we shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Now, in the summer of 1962, over 1,000 arrests took place in the small town of Albany, Georgia. The all-white city council refused to negotiate with the movement leaders and went to court to stop the marches. Matter of fact, they got a federal injunction that specifically named the leaders of the Albany movement and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Well, that night, the movement met at the Shiloh Baptist Church to discuss whether or not they should violate a federal injunction. And at one point during the mass meeting, the local minister, a man by the name of the Reverend Samuel Wells, stood up and addressed the congregation. And he said his name wasn't on any injunction. He'd lead the march the next day. Well, later that evening, the Reverend Ralph Abernathy spoke, and he also introduced this next song. And once again, a song that had begun as a spiritual became a new song of freedom, as the Reverend Wells marched down to Albany City Hall the next day, singing this song. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Now these are simple songs, folks. You know, you could make up a new verse right on the spot. With this song, it's just one line. You don't even need to make up a rhyme. But what you did need was a song leader who could shout out that new line so everybody could join in. So I'm going to take on the role of the song leader here tonight. And of course, if I was with you live, I'd be asking you to join in and sing with me. But you can do it at home if you care to. Ain't gonna let no injunction turn me around. Here we go. Ain't gonna let no injunction turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no injunction turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no jailhouse, ain't gonna let no jailhouse turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no jailhouse turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. All right. chief of police of this little town was a man named Chief Pritchett. And he was notorious for using violence against the civil rights demonstrators. So they decided they would shine a light on this injustice, and they did it by naming Chief Pritchett in many of their songs, including this one. Matter of fact, a nationally televised CBS documentary would later show footage of student demonstrators being dragged off to jail singing this next verse. Ain't gonna let Chief Pritchett turn me around. Here we go. Ain't gonna let Chief Pritchett turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let Chief Pritchett turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. All right, let's take it on home. There you go. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Well, songs filled the movement. They bred courage and solidarity and inspiration in the ever-present threat of violence. And as the movement continued to expand, more and more old songs evolved into new songs. But there were also brand new songs being written as well. And this is one of those. This is a song called If You Miss Me at the Back of the Bus, and it celebrates the victories of the civil rights movement. Now, it was written by a man from Southern Illinois, down by Cairo, not too far at all from the General John A. Logan Museum. His name was Charles Neblett. It was set to the melody of an old spiritual called "Oh Mary, Don't You Weep." Now, this song was actually inspired by Rosa Parks, the mother of the civil rights movement. And while I know most of you know this story, it bears repeating. On December the 1st of 1955, following a hard day's work, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat in the colored section of the bus, no less, for a white rider. Now, her arrest sparked the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott, and for all intent and purposes marked the beginning of the modern-day civil rights movement. Now, this song was actually written for a demonstration down in Cairo, Illinois. You see, in those days, white residents swam in a municipal swimming pool, but African-American children swam and died in the Mississippi River. Now, if you miss me at the back of the bus, you can't find me nowhere. Whoa, come on up to the front of the bus, and I'll be riding up there. I'll be riding up there. I'll be riding up there. Oh, come on up to the front of the bus, and I'll be riding up there. Now, the way this song works is very simple. The last line of each verse becomes the line we sing in the chorus, like this. And if you miss me at the picket lines, you can't find me nowhere. Whoa, come on down to the jailhouse, and I'll be rooming right there. I'll be rooming right there. I'll be rooming right there. Oh, come on down to the jailhouse, and I'll be rooming right there. Now, as they fought to desegregate that swimming pool down in Cairo, they sang this verse. And if you miss me at the Mississippi River, you can't find me nowhere. Whoa, come on down to the swimming pool, and I'll be swimming right there. I'll be swimming right there. I'll be swimming right there. Oh, come on down to the swimming pool, and I'll be swimming right there. Oh, let's pick it one time. Yes, and if you miss me at the cotton fields, you can't find me nowhere. Whoa, come on down to the courthouse, and I'll be voting right there. I'll be voting right there. I'll be voting right there. Oh, come on down to the courthouse, and I'll be voting right there. And if you miss me at the back of the bus, you can't find me nowhere. Whoa, come on up to the front of the bus, and I'll be riding up there. I'll be riding up there. I'll be riding up there. Oh, come on up to the front of the bus, and I'll be riding up there. Now, many of the most powerful freedom songs have their roots in gospel music. And one of my all-time favorites is the old hymn, "O Freedom." On August the 28th of 1963, the great black folk singer Odetta, she sang a magnificent version of "O Freedom" prior to Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech during the March on Washington. Now, historians generally have a hard time dating many of these old gospel songs. They were frequently just written through the folk process, a whole group of people over time making changes. No one kept accurate records. But when it comes to "O Freedom," well, they generally believe the song was written after January the 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. Historians today generally feel that this song was written as a response to the Emancipation Proclamation and sung by the enslaved in the South as a public reaction to the news of their impending freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more moaning, no more moaning, no more moaning over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more crying, no more crying, no more crying over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. more segregation. No more segregation. No more segregation over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Yes, before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Now, the accomplishments of the civil rights movement did not come without great suffering and hardship. And the saddest and most tragic event of all took place September the 15th, 1963, when a white man was seen getting out of a turquoise and white Chevrolet and placing a box beneath the steps of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. A few minutes later, the bomb exploded, killing Denise McNair, Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, and Carol Robertson. These four little girls had been in Sunday school at the church when that bomb went off. 23 others were maimed and injured in that blast. Now, one of the civil rights workers was a folk musician named Richard Farina. And he wrote this next song, Birmingham Sunday, as a way to record and to share these shameful and horrifying events. Come around by my side, I'll sing you a song. I'll sing it so softly it'll do no one wrong. On Birmingham Sunday, the blood ran like wine, and the choir kept singing of freedom. Oh, that cold autumn morning, no eyes saw the sun, and Addie Mae Collins, her number was 1. In an old Baptist church there was no need to run, and the choir kept singing of freedom. The clouds, they were dark, the autumn winds blew, and Denise McNair brought the number to 2. The falcon of death was a creature they knew, and the choir kept singing of freedom. The church, it was crowded, and no one could see that Cynthia Wesley's dark number was 3. Your prayers and her feelings would shame you and me, and the choir kept singing of freedom. Young Carol Robertson entered the door, and the number her killers had given was 4. She asked for a blessing and asked for no more, and the choir kept singing of freedom. On Birmingham Sunday, a noise shook the ground, and people all over the earth turned around. For no one recalled a more cowardly sound, and the choir kept singing of freedom. The men in the forest once asked of me, how many blackberries grow in the blue sea? I asked them right back with a tear in my eye, how many dark ships in the forest? A Sunday has come, a Sunday has gone. I can't do much more than to sing you this song. I'll sing it so softly it'll do no one wrong, and the choir keeps singing of freedom. And the choir keeps singing of freedom. And the choir keeps singing of freedom. In 1964, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was also known by the way as SNCC, well, they announced they would send volunteers down to Mississippi that summer for a voter registration drive. It would become known as the Freedom Summer. That June, 800 volunteers gathered for an orientation session at Western College for Women in Oxford, Ohio. One of the leaders of the group, James Foreman, told them to be prepared for death. He also told them that if they were arrested, they should just quietly go to jail because, and I quote him here, Mississippi is not the place to start conducting constitutional law classes for the policemen, many of whom don't have a 5th grade education. Well, on June the 21st, the day after the first 200 volunteers left for Mississippi, Foreman's words came eerily true when 3 civil rights workers disappeared. Michael Schwerner, Andrew Goodman, and James Chaney. They would later be found beaten to death and buried in a levee. Now, as this movement struggled to absorb this terrible blow, this next song, Keep Your Eyes on the Prize, took on a deeper significance. Now, a couple of years ago, I got the opportunity to perform that song at the Traverse City Film Festival up in Michigan. And 2 days after the performance, a man stopped me on the street and thanked me for keeping that song alive. And then he went on to tell me his story. He told me he'd been a freedom rider and had been in one of the buses that had been attacked. And he said he'd been on the bridge at Selma, Alabama on Bloody Sunday with John Lewis and so many other American heroes. And like them, was beaten and thrown into jail. And he told me they sang this song countless times throughout that ordeal. But then he told me something that really made me smile. He said they ultimately got so many demonstrators arrested, they desegregated the very jailhouse they threw them into. Silas bound in jail, had no money for to go their bail. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Paul and Silas began to shout. Doors popped open and they walked out. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Chains we can stand are the chains of hand in hand. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. I got my hand on the freedom plow. Ain't nothing gonna stop me now. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Done was wrong, staying in the wilderness too long. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. And the only thing we'd done was right was the day we started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Hold on, hold on, keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Now, many of the most widely publicized events during the Civil Rights Movement would take place in the summer of 1964 at St. Augustine Beach down in Florida, at what had traditionally been a whites-only beach. They conducted wade-ins. Now, internationally broadcast images of peaceful demonstrators being brutally attacked but standing their ground would help change American attitudes and inspire people around the world for generations to come. Dorothy Cotton of the Southern Christian Leadership Council was there, and she had this to say about that. She said, "I took the kids down to the water not realizing it was going to be so bad. Well, when we got there, I could see it was tense. All these policemen were congregated around, and 5 or 6 feet away, this group of hoodlums, and they started yelling obscenities at us. Well, we went on, myself and a group of teenage girls. We were afraid, but we felt we had to go. Well, after a period of harassment, they really charged. They knocked those little girls like they were men. One girl got a broken nose, messed up eyes and faces. Well, after the beatings, we went away. But we sang "Wade in the Water." We decided we'd come back again. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, God's gonna trouble that water. Well, now the Jordan River, it's chilly and cold, chills the body, but it frees the soul. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble that water. Well, now who are those children that are dressed in white? Looks like the children that are fighting for their rights. So wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble that water. Well, now who are those children that are dressed in red? Looks like the children Dr. Luther King led. Oh, wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble that water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, God's gonna trouble that water. Well, time after time, it would be freedom songs that would hold the movement together. In a letter home from Mississippi, one of the civil rights workers wrote, "The songs help dissipate fear. Some of the words have no real meaning. Others become rather monotonous when they're sung. But when they're sung in unison, when they take on a new meaning that goes beyond words and rhythm, there's almost a religious quality to some of these songs that has nothing to do with the usual concept of God. It has to do with a miracle that youth has organized to fight hatred and ignorance. It has to do with the holiness and the dignity of man." Well, this little light of mine is just that kind of song. In 1964, Fannie Lou Hamer, the hero and musician of the civil rights movement, she sang this song outside of the Democratic National Convention, where she had been refused admission even though she was a legally elected delegate. They wouldn't seat her because she was a black woman. Now, Fannie Lou Hamer was fighting for everyone's rights, regardless of your race, to have equal representation under the law and the right to vote. And her efforts would help change the world. shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I got the light of freedom, and I got the light of freedom. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, I got the light of freedom, I'm gonna let it shine. I got the light of freedom, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Way down there in Birmingham, and way down there in Birmingham, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, way down there in Birmingham, I'm gonna let it shine. And way down there in Birmingham, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, way down in that jailhouse, I'm gonna let it shine. And way down in that jailhouse, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it, yes I will now. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine. Well, friends, it was just over 55 years ago now that President Lyndon Johnson signed two landmark pieces of legislation into law. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and that also critically important Voting Rights Act of 1965. And with the stroke of his pen, President Johnson turned the course of the nation away from hatred and racial bigotry towards the road of social justice and equality. But we know that is a long, hard, twisting road to travel. And Lord knows we are nowhere near the end of that road. The struggle continues today like never before. But through all of those years of hardship, struggle, and hope, one song stood above all the others. We shall overcome. Now, the song was derived from an old church song, I'll Overcome Someday. And it had been adapted by coal miners in the 1930s for the picket lines and the black workers in the food and tobacco unions. It was adapted again afterwards. It was Zilphia Horton, the musician and union organizer, who took that song all across the South to unions everywhere and up to the Highlander Folk School. She would be the one to teach it to Pete Seeger. And Pete Seeger would be the one to add that slow, churning rhythm that would turn it into that hypnotically powerful statement of faith that it is today. In August of 1963, a 22-year-old folk singer named Joan Baez would lead over 250,000 people in singing We Shall Overcome during the March on Washington. President Lyndon Johnson would use the phrase, we shall overcome, in a speech delivered to Congress on March the 15th of 1965, just days after that bloody Sunday attack on the bridge in Selma, Alabama. And the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself would quote the lyrics from We Shall Overcome in his final sermon delivered on March the 31st, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. This song would factor heavily into the freedom movements of Northern Ireland and South Africa, where the song was banned from the airwaves and confiscated from record stores. It has quite literally become the freedom song of the world. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. And after the attack on the bridge at Selma, Alabama, Bloody Sunday, they wrote this verse: we are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. But there you go, friends. Oh, freedom songs of the civil rights movement. Once again, I want to thank the General John A. Logan Museum in Murfreesboro, Illinois, and P. Michael Jones, their director, for making this possible. I've had the pleasure of working with this museum a number of times in the past. If you've never been there, check them out, loganmuseum.org, and it's well worth your time to stop by if you're in the vicinity once things settle down a little bit with the COVID crisis.